I'm happy to be with you in this worship service today. As you know, I will be sharing the Sermon on the Mount. I first memorized this way back in the summer of 1968. In the spring of '68, the campus pastor at EMC, as it was known then, asked me if I would be willing to memorize the Sermon on the Mount and then give it at a chapel service in the fall. I said I would be willing to do that, but then I faced a dilemma. What version would I use? The modern version, the recent version that was out then was the New English Bible, so I thought it would be good to memorize it from that version, but it turned out to be one of the most difficult memorization projects I ever did, because I was so familiar with parts of the Sermon on the Mount from the King James Version, and to block that out and re-memorize it in a new version was really difficult. But I stuck with it and accomplished it. So don't expect to hear a new, one of the recent versions this morning. It'll be from the New English Bible. I should warn you that now that I'm 86 years old, I sometimes draw a blank in these long presentations, so I have a copy of the script here, and if I have to refer to it a time or two, I hope it won't be too distracting and that you will understand. You will, won't you?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to begin with an introduction I wrote to the Sermon on the Mount, portraying Jesus as a master teacher. Jesus truly was a top-notch teacher. He believed in the power of teaching. Jesus believed that teaching could change lives. He had less than 3 years to initiate a program that was to change the world, and he chose to do it not as some great political figure such as a king or a president, not even as a preacher, but as a teacher. The New Testament refers to Jesus as teacher or master something like 45 times, and only rarely does it refer to him as a preacher. Now, this is not to minimize the importance and place of preaching in our church life, but simply to emphasize the fact that Jesus was, first and foremost, a teacher. He had 12 students. His teachings were very profound, yet very simple. When he taught, one could almost smell the vineyards, hear the wind blowing, see flocks feeding, corn growing, sparrows falling, foxes playing havoc. He used illustrations that were familiar to his students. He talked about farmers sowing seed, fishermen catching fish, tailors sewing on patches, and husbandmen pruning grapevines. He was personally involved in the lives of these students. Word of his teaching began to spread, and people came from far and near to hear what he had to say. One day, when he saw the large crowd that had gathered, he went up on a hill, and there he took his seat. And when his disciples had gathered around him, he began to address them. And this is the teaching he gave. How blessed are those who know that they are poor. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. How blessed are the sorrowful. They shall find consolation. How blessed are those of a gentle spirit. They shall have the earth for their possession. How blessed are those who hunger and thirst to see right prevail. They shall be satisfied. How blessed are those who show mercy. Mercy shall be shown to them. How blessed are those whose hearts are pure. They shall see God. How blessed are the peacemakers. God shall call them his sons. How blessed are those who have suffered persecution for the cause of right. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. How blessed you are when you suffer insults and persecution and every kind of calumny for my sake. Accept it with gladness and exultation, for you have a rich reward in heaven. In the same way, they persecuted the prophets before you. salt to the world. And if salt becomes tasteless, how is its saltness to be restored? It is now good for nothing but to be thrown away and trodden underfoot. You are light for all the world. A town that stands on a hill cannot be hidden. When a lamp is lit, it is not put under a meal tub, but on the lampstand, where it gives light to everyone in the house. And you, like the lamp, must shed your light among your fellows so that when they see the good you do, they may give praise to your Father which is in heaven. Do not suppose that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to complete. I tell you this, so long as heaven and earth endure, not a letter, not a stroke will disappear from the law until all that must happen has happened. If anyone therefore sets aside even the least of the law's demands and teaches others to do the same, he will have the lowest place in the kingdom of heaven. Whereas anyone who keeps the law and teaches others so will stand high in the kingdom of heaven. I tell you, unless you show yourselves far better men than the Pharisees and the doctors of the law, you can never enter the kingdom of heaven. You have learned that our forefathers were told, do not commit murder. Anyone who commits murder must be brought to judgment. But what I tell you is this, anyone who nurses anger against his brother must be brought to judgment. If he abuses his brother, he must answer for it to the court. If he sneers at him, he will have to answer for it in the fires of hell. If, when you are bringing your gift to the altar, you suddenly remember that your brother has a grievance against you, leave your gift where it is before the altar. First go and make your peace with your brother, and only then come back and offer your gift. If someone sues you, come to terms with him promptly while you're both on the way to court. Otherwise, he may hand you over to the judge to the constable, and you will be put in jail. I tell you, once you're there, you'll not be let out till you have paid the last farthing. You have learned that they were told, do not commit adultery. But what I tell you is this, if a man looks on a woman with a lustful eye, he has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye leads you astray, tear it out and fling it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for the whole of it to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand is your undoing, cut it off and fling it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for the whole of it to go to hell. They were told, a man who divorces his wife must give her a note of dismissal. But what I tell you is this, if a man divorces his wife for any cause other than unchastity, he involves her in adultery, and anyone who marries a woman so divorced commits adultery. Again, you have learned that they were told, do not break your oath. An oath sworn to the Lord must be kept. But what I tell you is this, you're not to swear at all. Not by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king, nor by your own head, because you cannot turn one hair of it white or black. Plain yes or no is all you need to say. Anything beyond that comes from the devil. You have learned that they were told, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But what I tell you is this, do not set yourself against the man who wrongs you. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn and offer him your left. If a man wants to sue you for your shirt, let him have your coat as well. If a man in authority makes you go 1 mile, Go with him too. Give when you're asked to give, and do not turn your back on a man who wants to borrow. You have learned that they were told, love your neighbor, hate your enemy. But what I tell you is this: love your enemies and pray for your persecutors. Only so can you be children of your heavenly Father, who makes his sun rise on good and bad alike, who sends the rain on the honest and the dishonest. If you love only those who love you, what reward can you expect? Surely the tax gatherers do as much as that. And if you greet only your brothers, what is there extraordinary about that? Even the heathen do as much. You must therefore be all goodness, just as your heavenly Father is all good. Be careful not to make a show of your religion before men. If you do, no reward awaits you in your Father's house in heaven. Thus, when you do some act of charity, do not announce it with a flourish of trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogue and in the streets to win admiration from men. I tell you this, they have their reward already. But when you do some act of charity, do not let your left hand know what your right is doing. Your good deed must be secret. And your Father, who sees what is secret, will reward you. Again, when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites. They love to say their prayers standing up in synagogue and at the street corners for everyone to see them. I'll tell you this, they have their reward already. But when you pray, go into a room by yourself, shut the door, and pray to your Father who is there in the secret place. And your Father who sees what is secret will reward you. In your prayers, do not go babbling on like the heathen who imagine that the more they say, the more likely they are to be heard. Do not imitate them. Your Father knows what your needs are before you ask him. This is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, thy name be hallowed. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us the wrongs we have done, as we have forgiven those who have wronged us. And do not bring us to the test, but save us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. For if you forgive others the wrongs they have done, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, then the wrongs you have done will not be forgiven by your Father. So too when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites. They make their faces unsightly so that other people may see that they are fasting. I tell you this, they have their reward already. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face so that men may not see that you are fasting, but only your Father who is there in the secret place. And your Father who sees what is secret will reward you. Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth where it grows rusty and moth-eaten and thieves break in and steal it. Store up treasure in heaven where there is no moth, no rust to spoil it, no thieves to break in and steal. For where your wealth is, there will your heart be also. The lamp of the body is the eye. If your eyes are sound, you will have light for your whole body. If the eyes are bad, your whole body will be in darkness. If then the only light you have is darkness, the darkness is doubly dark. No servant can be slave to two masters, For either he will hate the first and love the second, or he will be devoted to the first and think nothing of the second. You cannot serve God and money. Therefore, I bid you put away anxious thoughts about food and drink to keep you alive, and clothes to cover your body. Surely life is more than food, the body more than clothes. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow and reap and store in barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. You are worth more than the birds. Is there a man among you who by anxious thought can add a foot to his height? And why be anxious about clothes? Consider how the lilies grow in the field. They do not work, they do not spin. And yet I tell you that even Solomon, in all his splendor, was not attired like one of these. But if that is how God clothes the grass in the field, which is there today and tomorrow is thrown on the stove, will he not all the more clothe you? How little faith you have. No, do not ask anxiously, what are we to eat? What are we to drink? What shall we wear? All these are things for the heathen to run after, not for you. Because your heavenly Father knows that you need them all. Set your mind on God's kingdom and his justice before everything else, and all the rest will come to you as well. So do not be anxious about tomorrow. Tomorrow will look after itself. Each day has troubles enough of its own. Pass no judgment, and you will not be judged. For as you judge others, so you will yourselves be judged, and whatever measure you deal out to others will be dealt back to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye, with never a thought for the great plank in your own? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's that plank in your own? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's. Do not give dogs what is holy. Do not feed your pearls to pigs. They will only trample on them and turn and tear you to pieces. Ask, and you will receive. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door will be opened. Is there a man among you who will offer his son a stone when he asks for bread, or a snake when he asks for fish? If you then, bad as you are, know how to give your children what is good for them, how much more will your heavenly Father give good things to those who ask him? Always treat others the way you would like them to treat you. That is the law and the prophet. Enter by the narrow gate. The gate is wide that leads to perdition. There is plenty of room on the road, and many go that way. But the gate that leads to life is small, and the road is narrow, and those who find it are few. Beware of false prophets, men who come to you dressed up as sheep, while underneath they are savage wolves. You will recognize them by the fruit they bear. Can grapes be picked from briars, or figs from thistles? In the same way, a good tree always yields good fruit, and a poor tree bad fruit. A good tree cannot yield bad fruit, or a poor tree good fruit. And when a tree does not yield good fruit, it is cut down and burnt. That is why I say, we will recognize them by their fruit. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of my heavenly Father. When that day comes, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did not we prophesy in your name, cast out devils in your name, and in your name perform many miracles? And I will tell them to their face, I never knew you. Out of my sight, you and your wicked ways. What then of the man who hears these words of mine and acts upon them? He is like a man who had the sense to build his house on rock. The rain came down, the floods rose, the winds blew and beat upon that house, but it did not fall because its foundations were on rock. But what of the man who hears these words of mine and does not act upon them? He is like a man who had the sense to build his house on sand. The rain came down, the floods rose, the winds blew and beat upon that house. Down it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished this discourse, the people were astounded at his teaching. Unlike their own teachers, he taught with a note of authority.